This webinar represents the one-time largest gathering of candidates for the AEM and CEM certification ever. You all have recognized the importance of certification in professional development. I'm pleased to be joined by our IAEM headquarters staff and our Certification Executive Committee. The Commission's goal through the certification webinar series is to help you recognize how close you are to certification. The certification webinar series was designed to help you get closer to a successful application packet. Over the next several months, we're going to be offering pro tips and opportunities to learn about how to submit a successful CEM or AEM application. Today's webinar will focus on an introduction to the series and the element that everyone has to submit the essay. We'll continue in May, June, and July looking at the remainder of the certification elements. Today's certification webinar series call will focus on, first, a special announcement, also an introduction to the certification program, the online application itself, of course, the AEM and CEM essay requirement, common application pitfalls, upgrading from AEM to CEM, and a question and answer session. I'm Keith Dowler, the chair of the Certification Commission, and I'm really pleased to announce our featured mentor program. Never before has the Certification Commission offered a direct conduit between application candidates and qualified mentors as we are today. The first time this has been announced, we are pleased to share with you the opportunity to go online to the IAEM.com website and find a mentor based on your specific sector of expertise and your geographic location. Although geographic location doesn't necessarily have to constrict or limit you to the mentor that you select, we think it's the best opportunity, if you can, to select somebody near to you to perhaps facilitate an in-person meeting. I encourage you to log in to IAEM.com/mentors.cfm and select your mentor today. As we conduct and go through the certification webinar series, I encourage you to submit any questions that you might have to ceminfo@IAEM.com. Again, that's ceminfo@IAEM.com. If you're unfamiliar with our programs, I just wanted to take one quick moment to tell you that the International Association of Emergency Managers hopes that we can be recognized globally as the premier organization for emergency management. And it's our mission to advance the profession by promoting the principles of emergency management, to serve our members by providing information, networking, and professional development opportunities to advance the profession. Throughout the world, we have at least 1,700 current certified emergency managers and over 200 associate emergency managers. There's plenty of opportunity for you to join these numbers, and our goal for this certification webinar series is to prove to you that certification is truly within your reach, and submitting a successful application can be easy. So let's dive into the certification basics. The AEM and CEM program is in place to recognize professionals with a comprehensive emergency management responsibility. This hopes to elevate the visibility of emergency managers and ensure a minimal amount of knowledge, skills, and abilities in comprehensive program administration. The requirements are in place to help set you apart from other applicants and other professionals in the field. The Associate Emergency Manager level takes into account 5 key elements in the application process. First, the essay, and we'll talk more about that later today. Also, emergency management and general management training. Also, letters of reference, proving that you are truly an asset within your community or your field of practice, and you have a support system in place. Also, all candidates are responsible for completing and passing the multiple choice examination. The difference between the AEM and the CEM takes into account 3 additional levels or 3 additional elements of performance, including 6 individual and separate professional contributions, experience, including time in service, and actual emergency management roles in either full-scale exercises, 2 functional exercises, or a major event. Also, the CEM is distinguished from the AEM by requiring a baccalaureate degree or higher from an accredited university or college. The certification process is not that challenging, and you can do the first part today by creating an online account at IAEM.com and navigating to the certification site. You can create an account and begin your application process with no charge. It's important, though, that you realize not to create a duplicate account. In the past, we've had candidates who have created one account, created a separate account, created their application in that second account, and lost all of their information because they don't remember that second account information, or the two have somehow gotten mixed together. Create that online account right away and start documenting your way towards certification. Paying certification fees is technically the next step. However, we encourage you to build that application before you do that. Submitting the application and taking the exam can happen exactly 12 months apart at the longest. You can submit your application to the commission for review, or you can take the exam. And we'll talk more about the whole application and the exam in the later certification webinar series presentations. Once the application is in the hands of the commission, we'll review it during the next commission cycle, and then you will receive a notice within 2 months. Once you receive that notice, you'll either find out that you've been accepted for certification at the AEM or CEM level, or you'll find out that your packet didn't quite meet the requirements, in which case you'll have 90 days to provide us, the commission, with additional documentation. We'll review that documentation and provide you a final notice. There are many tools and resources available to you. Even though we're going to cover the online application today and talk about the essay, all of this information can be found at the website on your screen or by simply navigating to IAEM.com. Don't forget, those featured mentors are available, and we hope that you connect with one of them and start that process towards a successful application package soon. The online application. So starting an application is not that challenging. Once you get to the website, you'll have the opportunity to retrieve a previously started application or online account, which if you've already created an account, we hope that you take the time to go back and find that account out find that account information and use that moving forward. Additionally, you can contact info@iaem.com if you have any questions. If you've already created an account and you're able to log in, or once you've created an account and log in, very similar to this. Here, you'll have the opportunity to add an application, and we hope that you select either AEM or CEM. And once you select your application, you will then be shown all of the elements in order to be submitted. As you work through completing the application, make sure that you click the Go On button and try not to use back and forward in your navigation browser. Using Go On and making sure that you save the application as you work through will ensure that your information is safe and secure and available for future work. CEM candidates have the option to check the box at the bottom of the cover page if they wish to be considered for the AEM credential should their application be found to be incomplete for the CEM. This is completely optional and totally up to you. However, it's not a bad idea if your application or your experience or any part of your application might seem questionable. Again, working with a featured mentor or a qualified mentor will help you towards understanding where you are in terms of acceptability. Again, it's critical that you save the application as you move forward. And anytime you navigate away from the application portal itself, save and exit will provide you with the coverage you need to ensure your application information is secure and safe. So let's talk about the essay. The essay is the component of one of the components of the application process that's required for both AEMs and CEMs. It is certainly the most subjective part of the application process, and commissioners use this as an opportunity to see into your understanding of emergency management, comprehensive emergency management. This is used to assess the candidate's knowledge and abilities of disaster and emergency management in the form of a written communication. And you should consider this equitable to an interview with the actual commissioners. Please keep in mind that commissioners don't know who you are, and understanding more about what you know through how you write is important. All candidates are required to answer the same scenario question. I'm going to read this so you understand what you should be looking forward to. You are the new emergency manager for an organization. After reviewing existing plans, after-action reports, and training records, your first task is to develop and present a written description of a specific problem and how you would solve it to enhance resiliency and provide for continuity. The essay itself should be between 1,000 and 1,500 words in 12-point font with 1-inch margins and double-spaced. This equals out to about 300 words per page. Essays that exceed that 1,500-word limit, although are reviewed comprehensively by our commissioners, typically don't do as well or score as high as essays that are able to keep the responses more concise. At the conclusion of every essay, candidates must type the following statement and sign the submission using an actual scanned signature or an electronic signature in the format that you see on the screen. All essays must include the following language. I verify that I have independently completed this essay with your name, your signature, either scanned or between forward slashes and the date. Any essay not including the signed statement will be automatically rejected, and candidates should pay special attention to the formatting requirements that are on the screen, keeping in mind that doesn't necessarily disqualify essays from being reviewed. However, our most successful essays are typically within 1,000 and 1,500 words. Now, I've shared with you information that is pretty readily available on the website, and I want to show you exactly what the commissioners are looking for in that essay. The essay and the scenario we've already discussed, and the statement that you should have included is included in the actual application. Essays are to be formatted into 6 specific sections. Pardon me. First of all, we want to identify the problem to be solved. Once you've taken your role as an emergency manager, as the scenario lays out, you need to identify the issue that you're going to be addressing. Second of all, what is your objective for what's to be achieved? Third, and that means the third section, describe the necessary actions that will be taken in order to achieve the objective and the problem solution. Fourth, describe the intended outcome as a result of the necessary actions. What do you expect to come out of the proposed solution that you've put forth? Fifth, describe the human resources utilized in the process. Any good emergency manager knows that one person doing all of the work will not yield the results that a team effort will. The sixth and final section should address the material and financial resources that are expected to be used in the process. People need stuff, people need resources, and people typically need cash, right? So including a paragraph discussing what those material and financial resources are is critical to a successful essay. Laying out your essay in these 6 sections is important, but there are also 9 elements that you need to discuss within each of these sections. That doesn't mean that you need to discuss all 9 in each section, but throughout the essay, you need to address each one of these. First, demonstrate an ability to develop a solution for the stated problem. Are you able to articulate clearly for people that have no idea who you are what your solution for the stated problem actually is? Are you able to demonstrate a knowledge of the prevention phase of disaster and emergency management activities? Are you able to identify how what you're proposing will completely prevent from bad things happening? In some cases you can, in some cases you can't. But it's important that you identify whether they are or they are not for prevention. And as we talk about these phases of disaster and emergency management activities, it's important that you understand as a candidate that it's important to not only mention these phases, but also describe how these phases actually apply to your stated solution. What we find is a lot of candidates think it is sufficient to mention the words mitigation and recovery in their essay, and they're disappointed when they find that their essay is kicked back because they haven't gone into depth and described their knowledge of the particular phase. We're looking for the same for the mitigation phase of disaster and emergency management activities. So how is what we're proposing going to lessen the impact of disaster and of the disaster? How are we going to prepare? So that's, I think many of us know the POETI, which is preparedness, organization, equipment, training, and exercises. How are we going to respond? And how are we going to recover or get back to normal as quickly as possible? And maybe that's a new normal. Also, we're looking for a demonstrated knowledge of how the organization, as it is presented within your essay, operates. So if you are, for instance, like me, a healthcare emergency manager, we would expect that you would know and be able to articulate the various rules, regulations, accreditation standards that apply to a hospital. If you are with a municipality, we would expect you to discuss in your essay information about how your local ordinances, state and federal laws apply. Speaking of laws, your demonstrated knowledge of codes, legislation, regulations, plans, policies, and procedures should be well documented throughout your essay. And finally, we're looking for that demonstrated skill in written communication. Essays that have poor grammar or don't necessarily convey ideas and thoughts well will likely be rejected. So again, as you work through your essay, format in these 6 categories or these 6 topic areas, and make sure that you include within your entire essay these 9 critical elements of knowledge, skills, and abilities. Common application pitfalls generally, not just focused to the essay section, include incomplete, sloppy, and out-of-order applications. Out-of-order applications used to be an issue as we used to process enormous binders submitted by candidates. However, it's still an issue as you are able to upload information into the system. Make sure that you're providing only the most essential information for commissioners to review, and make sure that the information is clear, concise, and to the point. Essays not including the signed statement, again, will be automatically rejected. Essays not including all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and the 6 design points, which are those formatting sections that we talked about, will likely be rejected as well. Finally, signatures. Either scanned signatures or our newly acceptable /your name / as a signature are absolutely critical to a successful essay. You can find the essay evaluation criteria, just as I proposed it to you today, posted on the Resource Center webpage at IAEM.com. And this shows very specifically how our commissioners will evaluate your essay submissions. As we include in our certification webinar series, maintaining certification is now a tiered process. In order to recertify, candidates must meet the requirements before the last day of the 5th full year following the year in which they were last certified, based on the requirements you see on the screen. We've adjusted and modified the training hours and how they're allocated, as well as the professional contribution categories. Upgrading certification is not that hard. In fact, I personally recommend that if you're on the border between submitting an AEM application and a CEM application, give yourself the benefit of the doubt and submit that AEM application and take an opportunity to upgrade at no additional fee based on the requirements that are in place at the time. Keep in mind that all of our requirements are subject to change without notice to candidates. Our website has the best and most accurate information for the current requirements. Make sure that you're aware of the AEM and CEM prep course, which is available to candidates and institutions. We're able to come out with a CEM commissioner to your location and provide a prep course which will get you ready for not only the application, but also an overview of the certification exam at your location. For more information, contact ceminfo@iaem.com. Finally, make sure that you have connected with your featured mentor by visiting iaem.com/mentors.cfm. Accessing and achieving your certification is truly within reach, especially with the help of somebody who's walked the path before. We are extraordinarily pleased and proud to offer over 180 CEMs throughout the world who are standing by waiting for your email or phone call to start that mentor process. At this time, candidates, we encourage you to provide us with questions either through the chat function of this webinar or through ceminfo@iaem.com. We will answer questions until 4 p.m. Mimi asked, although it is not included in this particular presentation, is volunteer work count? And the answer is yes. Volunteer work does count for comprehensive emergency management experience with the appropriate documentation stating the amount of time that you spent in your given role as an emergency manager and for how long. If you have questions, please type them into the chat feature at this time. Tim Settles asked, is APA style recommended? Tim, although we have some incredibly bright commissioners reviewing the essays, we don't particularly side with APA or any of the other particular styles. We keep it pretty simple and ask for 12-point font with 1-inch borders, and references certainly don't hurt. Jackie asked if we only have 12 months from opening the online application to submitting the complete application. And perhaps I misspoke. You have 12 months from submitting the essay or taking the exam to take the exam or complete the application. Excuse me, let me repeat that. You have 12 months from submitting the application to completing the exam, or 12 months from completing the exam successfully to submitting your application. You can take as much time as you need on the online portal to get your application together and ready for submission. The timeline only applies once you submit either or. And your payment to IAEM is due before you submit your application or take the exam, whichever you decide to do first. Eric asks, are there sample submission packets available to help reinforce what we're looking to see? Some of the best information and material at IAEM.com in the CEM Corner part of the website. The CEM Corner part of the website provides example essays and other example material that can help steer you towards submitting that successful application the first time. Danielle Listberger is asking if she has some letters of reference that are from last year, and is there a time limit on these? Danielle, thank you so much for your question, and it's good to hear from you. I am pleased to share that the time limit on your references, just like all the other information you submit with your application, is 10 years. However, any commissioner may contact your reference provider and ask for some details about your particular role with them. So we encourage you to provide references from people that are still familiar with your contributions to their organization. However, again, 10 years is the maximum. Thank you for the question, Danielle. We have a question: what is the added benefit career-wise of the certification abroad, outside of the U.S. and Canada? And I am really pleased to share that that my vice chair, one of my vice chairs, who's from Australia, shares that having the certified emergency manager in Australia really sets him apart in terms of not only achieving employment within emergency management, but also within the community of practice where he is. And I would venture to guess that that's similar in other places as well. Having the CEM or the AEM shows a commitment to the profession and that you have taken the necessary steps to be recognized by a group of your peers as having minimum knowledge, skills, and abilities. That's a good question. And we look forward to making increasing the number of international applicants and certified individuals as we move forward. Douglas Skinner asks, what's the current time frame of certificates for education requirements? I'm not quite sure what you're getting at there. I will say that all submissions have to have been completed within the last 10 years, and that includes all training, emergency management training, general management training. However, it does exclude your actual baccalaureate degree. When you go to submit your degree for consideration for the CEM, that does not have to be within the last 10 years. That has no time limit at all. If I didn't answer your question, Douglas, please feel free to send it to ceminfo@iaem.com. Josh asks, if you have to retake the exam, is the fee the same as the amount as the first time? Is the fee the same as the first time? And Josh, we're pleased to offer every candidate the opportunity to take the exam 2 times for the same cost. So you'll pay the fee once, and if for some reason you're unable to pass it the first time, you have another opportunity to take the exam, at which point, if you aren't successful, you will have to remit a new fee. However, if you are successful, there's no additional charge. And the same goes for your application packet. You have 2 opportunities. Paula asks, is a Canadian diploma in EM equivalent to a U.S. degree for qualification? Paula, I would love to be able to answer that. However, I know that there are significant differences between the United States and Canada, and I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction. I know that there are some equivalency options, and I would encourage you to specifically email that question to ceminfo@iaem.com, and I will pass that along to one of our Canadian commissioners who can address that specifically and give you the right information the first time. I do apologize, Paula. Please follow up. Joseph asks, do I count 3 years of comprehensive EM experience from the time that I initially open the application or from the time I submit? I am just under the 3-year limit, but I should have the 3 years by the time I complete all the process. Joseph, it all comes down to when you submit your application. You do not have to have your application open for 3 years in order to achieve certification. If you open your application today, pull all of your information together and submit it today, as long as you have the necessary experience documented, you will be able to be certified. Good question. Danielle May asks, do you suggest that we get mentors from our own organizations, or should we look elsewhere? Danielle, this is a very good question, and one that maybe I can shed some light on. People working within your own organization certainly have the best idea of what it takes to be certified, either as an AEM or a CEM. However, if there's no one in your organization that can help you achieve these milestones, we encourage you to select a featured mentor from the website and find somebody that has experience in your particular sector. Although it may not be within your organization, sectors typically have to address the same or similar issues and we hope we can find someone for you there. Feel free to look on IAEM.com/mentors.cfm to find a good mentor for you. Eric asks, is there any coordination with EMI to modify the requirements for graduates of Emergency Management Basic or Advanced Academies? Eric, we're very fortunate at the Commission to have a permanent ex officio seat designated specifically for FEMA. And one of our commissioners holds that seat, and we work with her very closely to assess and continuously assess the opportunities to bridge EMI training with our certification program. And as we are seeing these opportunities come up and these certificates come through the review process, we are working with her and FEMA as a larger body to enhance our criteria to match better with the certification process. So the answer is yes, we are in coordination, and if we have a lag time, honestly, it's only by several months at the most. So keep looking at the training allocation table on the website. That certainly provides you with the best and most up-to-date sample courses that we readily recognize. If you find one that's not on there, I encourage you to send an email to the ceminfo@iaem.com, and we can send that to our commissioner, who is specifically responsible for maintaining our training tables. Thank you. Jackie asks, is the exam tailored to the Canadian market? And yes, we do have a Canadian version of the exam, which is maintained by the Canadian team and our Canadian commissioners. So be on the lookout for that. The actual requirements for the Canadian exam are located on our website. Jeremy asks, how often do you have military officers apply, and is there anything that they may need to know that could be different from a traditional EM? Jeremy, thanks for writing. We are fortunate to have a couple of military representatives on the commission, and as I spoke about just a moment ago, they work continuously to provide our entire commission with the best information on training and experience we see coming out of the military. And the best opportunity I have for you is to work with one of our featured mentors who is out of the military or in the military, who represents the military, to get you that successful application. And truthfully, you're still meeting the same requirements of the CEM for anybody else or the AEM for anybody else. However, providing that documentation in a way that all of our commission can appreciate, understand, and give you credit for does take a little bit of effort, and the mentors that have been through the process can provide you with the best course of action to get that through easiest. And a good question. Paula asks, can training that exceeds 10 years be submitted exclusively to establish a history of experience in the field? And Paul, based on your question, no. Training and experience in the field we consider separately, and training does not necessarily count as experience. We look for job descriptions and supervisor statements for experience, or if it's a volunteer role, the same, just a little bit more detail needed. However, training does not necessarily provide us with what you have done in your role, only for the experience piece. Greg asks, does military education and training count towards certification? What if it's older than 10 years? Absolutely. Military training and education does count if it falls into either general management or emergency management training, which is one of our future certification webinars. However, if it's greater than 10 years, it is not able to be counted, just like everybody else. It has to be within the last 10 years from the date that you click submit on your application. Ken is asking a clarifying question, and he says that I understood you to say that general management coursework under a BS more than 10 years ago, that the GM for the BS does not count, correct? I want to make one clarifying statement that I think will help a lot of you, and that is if you're submitting your degree, if you're submitting your bachelor's degree or any degree to satisfy your education requirement, you may not use any of those courses in your training or general management, or excuse me, your emergency or general management training hours. If you have a second degree that you'd like to submit to help offset some of those general management or emergency management hours, you can, given that they were within the last 10 years. However, submitting the degree for your education requirement and submitting the same courses under your general management or emergency management training would be considered double dipping, and we don't allow that. Another question from Levitha, would a master's degree in emergency management without strong experience qualify for CEM? And the answer is no. The emergency management degree would certainly satisfy the training the education requirement. However, you have to have, for the CEM, at least 3 years of emergency management, comprehensive emergency management experience, or it's reduced to 2 years if you have a degree in emergency management itself. So any degree can qualify for the education requirement. However, we are looking for actual experience there. Thank you, Luvitha, for that question. Do graduate degrees in a related disaster or emergency management field offset the 3 years of field experience required from the CEM? Thank you, David, for that question. And nothing offsets the experience requirement for the CEM. The CEM demands at least 3 years of experience in an a comprehensive emergency management role, which can be reduced to 2 years if your degree is in emergency management itself. And we're starting to see a lot of very specific questions on the chat about individuals' degrees and how they apply to the CEM, and we're not going to address those. Those I would encourage that you submit to ceminfo@iaem.com so we can keep this discussion as general as possible. Although it's not included in this particular webinar series discussion, Robert does pose a good question. When asking for letters of reference, what should I recommend be included in the letter? And Robert, what we're looking for there is, first of all, it needs to be on letterhead and hand signed by the individual offering the recommendation. And there are a few more requirements there which we'll discuss in a future webinar series presentation. However, obviously it needs to be something akin to, yes, Robert's a good guy, and I am encouraging the commission to offer him designation as a CEM. He's done this, that, and the other. Stuff along those lines. Nothing too much more specific unless it's coming from a supervisor, at which point you might want to have them go ahead and include information about timelines and when you were working, etc. And what you did, excuse me. Are there any more general questions for this discussion, specifically focused on the exam? The exam, again, is one part of the application process that we truly encourage you work through a mentor, particularly one of our featured mentors, to get accomplished, and it'll take probably 2 or 3 times with one of them to get it just perfect, so you have nearly nothing to worry about when it goes before the certification commission. Are there any other questions? All the questions in the queue are very specific, and they have to do with individuals' work. So at this time, I am going to thank everybody for viewing, and make sure that you are registered for the upcoming webinar series sessions, and you can find those on the website at IAEM.com. I'm Keith Dowler, Chair of the Certification Commission, and thank you so much for joining us. There's no reason not to get your certification done in 2017. We look forward to reviewing your application this year. Thank you so much. Goodbye.